Waking up, I found myself tightly held by a warm body, the air filled with a man's scent. Memories of yesterday rushed back. A werewolf. Despite barely knowing him, here I was, snuggled up in his bed. Chapter 14, Werewolfing 101. I felt a heavy arm resting around my waist as I awoke. A manly aroma filled my nostrils as I came to my senses, but I didn't want to get up. I was pressed against a hard, warm body which felt like heaven. Knowing that this may be a dream, I unknowingly snuggled closer as the arm gripped me tighter. Then everything from yesterday came rushing back to me, and my eyes instantly shot open. Werewolf. I looked at the arm that held me secured to their body and instantly knew it was none other than Thane. The warmth that his body was radiating felt divine, and the tiny sparks that appeared on my skin wherever we touched felt like magical touches, but I knew that this wasn't right. Mate or not, I barely knew Thane, and yet here I was lying in his bed snuggling with him. Just the thought of Thane being the beast made me sick because of what he was capable of. I gently moved his arm off my body, which was a challenging task because he held onto me like a koala bear. After a few attempts, I successfully got his hand off me, sat up and looked down at the guy next to me. Thane was sound asleep and he looked much younger. There wasn't any sign of stress or frown lines that graced his face when he was awake. Instead, he looked like a true 19-year-old and, dare I admit, slightly more handsome. I thought he was light sleeper, but as I got off the bed ungracefully and not quiet at all, I was surprised to see him still asleep. Not wanting to be caught in bed with him, I rushed off to the bathroom to get ready for another day stuck with Thane. I wonder if he had any more secrets to drop on me. Without a second thought, I grabbed a pair of jeans and a plain shirt from an closet and went about getting ready. The steamy bath helped clear my mind and distress from all the information that was laid on me the day before. Realizing I have been in the shower for quite some time, I grabbed a towel and stepped out of an luxurious enclosure only to come face to face with the beast himself. "Good morning," he greeted with a smirk as he casually stood leaning against the doorframe, staring me up and down. "What are doing in here?" I exclaimed as I pulled my towel tighter around me. He just chuckled as he continued to stare at me. "What? Can't a guy scare his girl?" I gave him a bewildered look. "Since when was I your girl and don't you know how to knock? You know, if you had woken me up we could have conserved water, right?" he said, dodging my question. "Just go," I said, pointing to the door as he got my heart racing. He walked closer to me, so there was barely any space between us, and I could have felt the heat radiating off his bare chest. "I'm right outside if you change your mind," he whispered in my ear, and his breath on my neck sent to chill down my spine. Thane marched his boxer-clad body out the door, and I can't but admire his rear. He did have a nice ass. "No, Emma, what are you thinking?" I thought to myself. He left me all flustered as I quickly changed into my clothes before he came back unannounced. I brushed the nest that was my hair and scrubbed my teeth clean. When I walked back into Thane's bedroom, I was once again amazed at the beautiful sight that was right outside his bedroom window. The beautiful mountains and acres upon acres of green grass that flourished around us with the clear blue sky above. Today was a perfect day to spend outside. Maybe I could sneak out when Thane wasn't around. Where was he anyways? "Thane," I called out as I exited the room and walked down the hallway. I heard him call back at me from the kitchen. When I rounded the corner to the kitchen, I almost laughed at the sight in front of me. Standing in the kitchen, the big bad werewolf was dressed in his boxers and an apron, flipping what seemed to be pancakes. I must admit I could get used to the sight of domestic Thane. "Nice look you got going on there," I commented as he turned to me with a shy smile. "Like what you see, sweetheart?" He winked at me. The ugliest thing seems to have a certain appeal to me. Way to hurt a man's pride, sweetheart. He held his chest in fake hurt. I stuck out my tongue at him like the child that I was. "Need any help?" I asked when he turned away smiling. "That depends. Can you cook?" he asked, looking at me warily. "Well, you can say that I once burnt water." I let out a humorless laugh. He looked at me incredulous. "You're kidding?" He laughed. I smiled nervously. "I'm afraid not. But water can't burn. It evaporates, but I don't think it burns." He turned to stare at me. "Guess I can't even burn water, right?" I grinned. "I'll take your answer as a no on cooking." He smiled at me. Why don't you grab our coffees and set the plate? Sure. He directed me to cupboard that held the mugs and it was way above where I could reach. I stretched my entire body trying to get the mugs, but it was of no use and I didn't want to ask Thane for his help after I had to admit that I couldn't even boil water. Just when I thought I was going to reach a mug, I felt a warm, sturdy body pressed against mine, sending sparks throughout my own body, as he stretched above my head and easily took down 2 mugs without difficulty. I wonder if he knew the effect he was having on me when he did stuff like that. He placed the mugs in front of me, but lingered behind me as his hot breath on my neck sent sweet chills down my back. I cleared my throat so he would move away, and to my surprise he did. I let my hair fall to cover my burning cheeks as I peeked and saw him grinning down at the pancakes he was making. I had all these conflicting emotions. I like him, yet am scared of who he is. The side of him I didn't know. I poured our coffee out, grabbed 2 plates and set it on the counter. How do you like your coffee? Bleh. I'm a bit like your personality, isn't it? I mumbled under my breath. What are you trying to call me? Boring. He asked, and I mentally slapped myself because of course he had super hearing. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I answered, meekly. If you want to see fun, sweetheart, I could show you the best time of your life. He winked and I caught on to his innuendo. Yeah. Would I get to see the beast within? I asked, playing along as I looked at him mischievously across the counter. Oh, you could see all of me. Thane growled lowly. Too bad you're not my type. I grinned and moved to look for the sugar and cream for my caffeinated goodness. Your ear tease, you know that, he said with an anguished look on his face, and I sent him a wink. After sweetening my mix, I saw Thane patiently waiting for me. Pancakes? He asked when I took a seat next to him by the counter. Sure, I said, grabbing a plate as he placed Wayne all that I could eat. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to eat 8 pancakes. I looked at my pile in reluctance. Eat up, princess, we have a long day ahead of us, he said as he began gobbling down pancake after pancake. I was so sure that he was chewing. I barely finished 1 pancake and he probably already ate 5, and he had quite a few more on his plate along with eggs, bacon and sausages. What? He innocently asked when he noticed me staring. Nothing, I mumbled before turning back to him. It's just that you eat way more than an average person can eat at once. Are you okay? I asked, concerned. It seems that you have forgotten that I'm a werewolf, which means my metabolism is a lot faster, and with all the shifting and running we do all day, we can eat a horse for breakfast alone, he clarified. I almost choked on my coffee. He chuckled at my reaction. Figuratively, of course. Wait, so why do I have to eat all these pancakes? Don't worry, just eat, he continued as he ignored my constant glare on him. After breakfast, I helped Thane wash the dishes. Then he got dressed, and then we were off to wherever he planned on taking me. I was a bit apprehensive, but I couldn't take another day inside. Thane told me to change into something more comfortable, and I knew that we were venturing outdoors, and I, for one, was happy. I changed into some shorts because I saw Thane had on a gym shorts and a plain t-shirt, and laced up my sneakers. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Ready as I'll ever be, I said, trailing behind him down the steps and straight out the front door. We made it back to the S-Jeep, where he opened my door for me in the gentleman fashion he somewhat possessed. Then we were off. Silence fell upon us, and it was particularly uncomfortable, but it was a bit awkward. So I never asked, why didn't you tell me that you were a werewolf when you first brought me here? By the waterfall, I asked as curiosity at me. Believe it or not, your great big beast was scared. Scared of rejection, which you could have done, he said, looking straight ahead, and I couldn't help but notice his knuckles turning white as he grabbed the steering wheel. You've said rejection since yesterday, and contrary to popular belief, werewolfing 101 isn't that commonly known of. I gave him a curious glance. I could tell from his expression that he didn't want to talk about it, but if I was going to be a part of his pack for the rest of my life, I wanted to know everything. He cleared his throat, and before I could stop him, he answered my question. If you didn't desire me, you could have simply gotten rid of me with a few words. All you had to say was I, Emery Aiken, reject Thane Blackwood of the Blood Moon Pack and accept all consequences and pain on my own from this point on. Just hearing the words escape his mouth brought on a deep searing pain within me, and I knew it had something to do with the mate bond forming between Thane and myself. Finding my voice, I asked a question that I knew would anger Thane. What would happen if I rejected you? Would I be able to return to my family? I asked cautiously, knowing it was a sore topic. I saw his grip tightening around the wheel and practically felt anger radiating of him. Now that you know, are you going to reject me? He asked, not sparing a glance towards me. Instinctively, I reached my hand towards one of his that was gripping the wheel. Him not leaving. And with the 3 words, his grip loosens and he looked at me like I grew to heads. What if I told you that you would be able to reunite with your family? Are you trying to get rid of me now? I asked with a little smile. No. I wouldn't have dragged you all the way here if I didn't want you. He replied, making me blush. So if I were to reject you, I would be able to go back home? I questioned again. No. If you rejected me, you would have been taken across the country where you would be given a new identity and I would take care of all your expenses while having someone look after you. He explained while glancing between me and the road. You wouldn't be able to return to Fairburn or tell anyone of our existence. After everything I learned about you over the past few days, I'd ought to leave. It may be ridiculously insane, but it's too insane for me to want to leave everything here behind. I said, smiling at him. Good, because if you did reject me, I don't think this pack would have survived. Knowing that my mate was far away from me, I wouldn't be able to function, plus the moon goddess will punish us with immense pain for breaking our bond, and in conclusion our pack would suffer. He explained. Told you I was your savior. Yes, you are. He smiled, reaching for my hand and entwining his fingers with mine. Just the mere contact made butterflies flutter in my stomach and my cheeks burn. We dialed down to a peaceful silence with only the radio tunes playing, and I couldn't help but notice once again that the road was completely empty. I guess Werewolf didn't drive cars unless it was necessary. Suddenly being a human felt like a burden as compared to the superpowers. In a matter of minutes we pulled up outside a dense-looking forest, and I cast a curious glance towards Thane, who only shot me a smirk. Thane angled his hand from mine, and I instantly felt our lost connection, but shaking it off I got out of the jeep before he could get my door. Where are we? I asked when I walked to his side at the entrance to the forest. Come on, he said, grabbing my hand and pulling me alongside him into the deep green woods. With a few steps and I could suddenly hear noises that replicated fighting, and I looked up at Thane to see expression. But one glance at him and he wasn't at all worried. We broke out into an immense clearing that was scattered with around 100 persons who were all engaged in some sort of fight or exercise. Suddenly I regretted not going to the gym back in Fairburn when I had the chance. Everyone I could see was fit and ripped. Noticing a few girls dressed in sports bras and tiny shorts, I suddenly felt self-conscious of my clothes. Maybe a tad jealous as well, because Thane had a clear view of their assets which were shown through their skin-fitted clothes, while I over here was practically covered for winter. Maybe he would be the one to reject me instead of the other way around. Welcome to Werewolf Thing 101, he said, quoting me from a few minutes ago as he brought my attention back to him. Where are we? I asked, looking around with growing curiosity and a bit of hesitation. This is where you're going to learn how to fight. How to defend yourself and help protect your pack, he said, giving my hand a gentle squeeze as he noticed my expression. Thane, I started not knowing if I should tell him or not. He's not the fittest person or the exercising type, I admitted, looking at the grass-covered floor beneath my feet. He lifted my chin so I was looking straight into his eyes. Hey, don't worry, I'm not going to make you fight or do anything you don't want to. But I do want you to be able to protect yourself in case I'm not with you at any time. But Thane, listen, it's my duty to protect you, Emery, and I would give my life for yours any day. But there are going to be times when I wouldn't be in the same room with you, and knowing that you know at least one skill to protect yourself will let me be a little less anxious when you're not with me, he said, cutting me off. But I can't even throw straight. How am I going to learn to protect myself? I exaggerated. He shot me an egotistical smirk. Because you're going to have the best teacher helping you. I rolled my eyes at him before he laughed and pulled me to the middle of the clearing. As we walked through the field, everyone stopped what they doing. even if it was pinning their opponent down. To greet Thane. A few even said hi to me, and I couldn't help but smile at them and bid them a good morning. I was shocked to see that everyone looked upon us proudly with respect, and there was no sign of hatred, annoyance or jealousy from anyone's eyes or expression. Thane seemed truly loved among his people, and I could tell from their looks that he was a great leader. I couldn't help but feel a little proud of what Thane had here in his little town. As we neared the middle of the clearing, I could see a few wolves having a fight further away from us. I couldn't help but be a bit afraid, but also look upon them in awe. They replicated the beast, which still held an unsettling feeling within me, but looking at the bodies of fur. They were magnificent creatures. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. A guy who looked familiar greeted. "Beau, this is Emery, my mate," Thane said, introducing me to him. "Emery, this is Beau, my delta, otherwise known as my pack strainer and best fighter." Beau cut in as he grabbed my free hand and shook it in introduction. Thane let out a low growl, and I could feel him tense up next to me. "Watch yourself, Beau, and don't touch her," he ordered in a commanding tone. I silently laughed at his tone. "It's nice to meet you, Beau," I said in a friendly voice to help cut the tension that Thane just created. I would like to say the same, but I'm afraid that they might chew my head off. Beau replied with a grimace. Laughing at his reply, I continued the conversation. "Oh, don't worry, he is just jealous that he isn't the best fighter." With a loud growl escaping Thane, he bent so close to my ear that I could feel his warm breath sending chills on my neck. "I'll have you know, sweetheart, I'm the best fighter in this pack. Hell, I'm the best fighter in this country." For what seemed like the millionth time that day, I blushed at his comment as I looked up to see Beau looking away from us. When he noticed Thane pulled away from me, he turned his attention back on us. "Ready, love birds?" Beau asked with a knowing smile. Thane left my side and walked to Beau with what seemed like a hard slap on his chest. "Touch her and I'll feed you to the rogues. I know where to draw the line then. Chess, my Luna." He raised his hands in surrender. After a curt nod and exchange of glances between the two, "My training begun." "I thought you were going to train me?" I asked Thane with a little disappointment laced in my voice. He gave me a smile as he explained. "I am the best fighter and teacher, but I regret to say that Beau is more experienced with training a newbie, so he is going to work with you for the next few weeks until I could help you out a little more." "What little faith you have in me," Beau sighed. I just rolled my eyes at him as he moved in front of me and began explaining what is required of me for this training. "Thane will bring you to train at least 3 times a week, and as soon as you step foot in this clearing, I expect you to run at least 10 laps around." "Which starts now," he said, starting his timer. I looked at him in disbelief. No way was I going to run around this field 10 times. Heck, I wouldn't even run it once. This field was huge. "Come on, clock's ticking," Beau said, tapping his watch and waiting. I laughed in his face, thinking this was a joke, but as he and Thane remained silent, I realized they were serious. "You're not joking, are you?" I asked in horror. "Afraid not, Luna. Now come on, let's go." "Let's go," he said, clapping his hands in a similar fashion a gym teacher would. I looked at Thane, hoping he could see the disbelief in my eyes. "I think 3 would do for today," Thane said, patting Beau on his back as he grabbed my hand and pulled me alongside him as he picked up pace, and soon we were running side by side. "Thank you." I smiled at him. He winked at me as he slowed his pace, and I could tell I was keeping him back, but he looked as if he didn't mind at all. By the second lap I was out of breath and soaked in sweat. Not a pleasant sight, I assure you. My legs were aching, and to make it any worse, Thane left when I started my 3rd and last lap. I should have paid more attention in gym class. Thane said that he had to help Beau train the other wolves, and I knew it was a part of his job being alpha, but I couldn't help but feel a little abandoned. Damn, I was getting too attached. I almost laughed at myself, thinking that I was the same girl who wanted out of the ritual. Thought Thane was going to kill me and then almost ran away from him. Now here I was getting attached to my mate. I looked around the field as I tried to run around it and saw teenagers. Adults and wolves all training and fighting, and I could tell that Thane kept them in shape. I wondered why, but then my mind went back to Jake and the hunters back in my town, as well as the rogues who ran amok. I guess they had to be prepared for anything both in human and wolf form. Thane was supervising over the wolves that were in the middle of a fight and when they were finished he was giving them pointers on how to improve. When I passed by where he was I showed him a smile, and he seemed to have lost concentration as he looked at me in awe. With the last few steps I finally completed my 3 exhausting laps and couldn't help but be grateful when Bo appeared in front of me with a bottle of water. Thank you. I managed out when I drank nearly the entire bottle. Please tell me that's all for the day. I nearly begged. He chuckled with a wary look. Because you're either Luna. I'm letting you off for the day. But come tomorrow you're going to running for laps and you're going to start practicing some self-defense techniques. Deal. I rushed out shaking his hand to ensure our simple contract is sealed. Before my hand could even come in contact with his I was suddenly pulled away from him and an angry looking feint of me. I told you not to fucking touch her. He growled out at Bo. Hey, it's my fault. I said gripping his hand that was clenched onto BAS jersey. I felt bad because it was my fault. I was going to shake BAS hand, not the other way around. Thane let go of him and grabbed my hand before pulling me to the other side of the field, where some people were training. I don't want you around him again. Understood? Thane commanded angrily. I pulled him to a stop and gave him an incredulous look. I know it isn't me that you're commanding. I said staring to get angry for the one thing I hated which were misogynistic. Controlling men. You are not to train with him ever again, he said growling. I pulled my hand out of his and stood with confidence. No, I'm going to train with him and you're going to get rid of your anger because it is uncalled for. Emery, no Thane. You can't command me. I thought I was supposed to be your equal. Well, let it go and don't ever use that tone with me again, I said looking him straight in the eye. It was that I wanted Bo to train me. I would much prefer Thane, but he had to know that I was going to be pushed around and controlled. He finally said in defeat. I smiled at him as I turned around, continued to where he was going. By the way, you look really hot jealous. I commented. Shit, I can't believe I just said that. I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I heard you clearly, he said walking to my side with a huge grin on his face. Oh shut it, I lamely replied as he stopped us in front of a few fighters. There were 2 pairs of boys fighting and 1 pair of girls. They were impressive. Their technique, skills and precision was impeccable and they did it with such grace that I could just imagine how shameful my running from earlier must have looked compared to them. But all that flew out of my thought when I saw what the girls were wearing. Sports bras and shorts. Just great. They were on full display in front of Thane. I folded my arms and gave them an envious look. You okay? Thane asked with a worried look. Can we leave? I'm exhausted, I said turning to leave. Okay. Just a minute, he said turning back to the group. Great job, guys. Met, I need to see you more focused, man. Your head is somewhere else and your opponent will pummel you. Girls looking great, keep it up. I rolled my eyes at his last sentence. Of course he will tell them great job while I didn't even get a thumbs up for my lame as running. Thanks, Alpha. They all said in unison as we left. Thane reached for my hand, but I pulled away as we walked out of the clearing until towards his jeep. Hey, what's wrong? He asked, grabbing my shoulder before I could get into the jeep. Nothing. I shook my head, but he kept his hold on me. No, clearly there's something bothering you. Tell me, he said, lifting my chin so he could look into my eyes. I said it's nothing. I pulled away and jumped into my seat as I shut the door in an S-face and buckled up. As he got in, he started the jeep, but before he pulled off he grabbed my hand in his large one. You did a fantastic job today. I'm really proud of you. But if it gets too much, just tell me, okay? He said, looking at me with sincerity. Thank you. I will, I said, feeling slightly better. By the way, he continued, and I looked up at him. You look really sexy jealous also. He shot me a wink. A day later, Thane told me that I would finally be meeting the pack officially. I was a bit scared since he said there were over 800 wolves in the pack, and I was meeting most of them. Thane was already dressed in a simple jeans and shirt while I was searching for the racks trying to find something decent to wear. Thank goodness Bailey chose a few dresses, or else I would have been going to meet the pack in sweatpants, after throwing on a pastel pink wrap dress. Thane led me outside, but instead of taking the jeep to our location, he let pull to the forest on one side of the pack house. The sun was setting and the sun rays were shining beautifully down through the leaves. As we walked it a bit through the forest, we stumbled into a clearing that was almost twice the size of the one where the pack trained. It was filled with people, some of whom I recognized and others who I hadn't had the chance to meeting yet until now. In the clearing there were fairy lights strung up from tree to provide lighting for us when the sun set. It looked like a fairy garden scene stolen straight out of a fairy tale. As we entered the clearing, everyone greeted us until we reached Thane's parents, who I also need to officially meet. Mond. Thane greeted them before he turned to me with one arm on my back. This is our new Luna and my mate. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. Emery. This is my dad, Carson, and my mom. Thane introduced us as and pulled me into her arms. It's so good to see you again, my child. And told me I couldn't help but feel guilty. I'm very sorry for what I said, Mrs. Blackwood. She cut me off before I could fully apologize to her. I understand what happened, my dear, and you don't need to apologize to me. I've been in your place before and I get how hard it can be. Especially since my son had you thinking that he was going to kill you. My heart warmed at her response and I couldn't help but rush the punks and help but wrap my arms around her one more time, for she reminded me of my own mother. Thank you, Mrs. Blackwood. It means a lot to have your forgiveness, I said earnestly. She smiled at me. You're part of the family now, dear. Call me Anne. What she said was true. I did feel like I was a part of the family in a weird way. I must be being here for a week, but I felt a connection to them like I did with my own family. It scared me, but at the same time warmed my heart to know that they consider me a part of their family now. Carson was next to pull me into his arms. Welcome to the pack, Emery. You remind me just of my daughter. He smiled as he pulled away and flicked his eyes to Thane. If he gives you any trouble, just call me all right, kiddo. I laughed as Thane playfully grumbled. To think in your kid. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. Call me Carson. You'll make me feel old if you call me anything but you are old, honey. And told him with a large grin. Thane spun me around and placed his lips to my ear and tightened his grip on me. Let's go meet everyone else before my parents start to flirt in front of us. I smiled at what he said. They're just in love. I didn't even know them, and I could tell as much from the way they acted or looked at each other. It was a pure, true, unconditional love, something I wish to have one day. Maybe that'll be us someday. I barely heard Thane whisper, but I caught it and looked up at him to see him with a shy smile. I couldn't help but lean up and peck his cheek. As soon as I realized what I did, Thane looked down at me with wide eyes. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. No. Don't be. I'm yours and you can have your way with me as you please. He winked. I just didn't expect it, but thank you. As he said that, I caught his cheeks turn a slight pink and could tell he was blushing. I giggled at his reaction before one by one, pack members approached us to introduce themselves to me while Thane introduced me as the Luna. Even though I was apprehensive about how tonight would go down, everyone was exceptionally amiable and genuinely looked at me with pride. That is of course everyone but Abigail, Bailey's adoptive sister. I saw as she approached us, giving me a death glare and Thane a seductive smirk. She had on a too tight and short of a dress that I would deem more of a club with than anything else. But to each her own. Thane, she drawled as she practically pushed herself between the two of us with her back to me. Our entwined hands were separated because of her intrusion. From where I was standing, long forgotten by the pair, I could see Abigail place her hands on Thane's chest and outwardly flirt with him. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. This is, Thane began, but before he could say anything she cut him off. I've missed you, you know. You've been a little busy lately and you haven't been coming around me anymore, Abigail said with a smirk as she flipped her long blonde hair in my face. I wasn't an angry or violent person, but this girl was making that change as I couldn't help but want to rip her extensions out from her head. I don't know what you mean. Thane looked her with a confused expression. She turned to look at me with disgust before she leaned closer to Thane's face and whispered, loud enough for me to hear, "She can't give you what you want, Thane, and you know that. So come back to me when you get bored." I felt my blood boiling by this revelation. Thane and her used to be a thing. I knew it, not wanting to see her undress Thane with her eyes anymore. I walked towards what I presumed was the direction of the pack house. Not like they remembered I was standing there either. But before I could leave, a few pack members stopped me to talk and I couldn't say no. A few minutes into the conversation about their kid, I felt a presence behind me, and from the electricity I practically felt around me, I knew who it was. The ladies greeted him in respect before they walked off, and I was left to face him, but I didn't. He, however, wrapped his arms around my waist and rested his chin on my shoulder. "I'm sorry about her," he started as he placed a small kiss on the shell of my ear. "You said that you hadn't had anything." I replied as I recall him telling me just that the day I met Abigail. "We did once when I was younger, but that was a mistake and before I ever knew about you. You have to believe me. I haven't thought about her in years," he said, holding me tighter. "I get that you have a past and she's a part of the pack, but I don't want her to shove it in my face every time I'm around her. She wouldn't anymore. I spoke with her and threatened to throw her out of the pack if she messes with you again," he said in a final tone. I spun around in his arms with a disbelieving look. "Thane, you can't do that just because she's in love with you. She isn't in love with me and I can do what I wish. Well, she's deeply enamored by you and I could face my battles on my own." I huffed. He cupped my cheek. "I know you can, my little warrior, but I tolerate the way she treats with you and I never want to see the look on your face that you had when she was talking to me again. I'm enamored by only you, and as the Luna she needs to respect that." He placed a kiss on my forehead. "So you aren't together again, right?" "We haven't been since we were 16, and it was a 1-week kind of fling," he assured me. "Well, she thinks that you guys are a thing." I shrugged as jealousy ate at me. "It doesn't matter what she thinks. You're my mate and everyone knows that. Every part of me knows that. She should know that I have you by side. I know we're still practically strangers, but I felt so angry when she had her hands on you. I think I'm going to need you to burn your shirt," I grumbled. Thane laughed at my expression. "I will if that makes you happy." I just shrugged. "Burn her fake hair extensions while you're at it." He really couldn't stop himself from full-on laughing at this point. "It's nice that you see the situation as funny. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." He sobered up a bit before he wrapped his arms around my shoulders since my arms were folded between us. "What can I say? My mate tells the best jokes." I was joking. Ignoring me, he continued. "She's also the sexiest, feist-est little thing when she's jealous. It's a real turn-on." I rolled my eyes at him despite my blush. "You saying turn-on is a turn-off." He started to laugh again until we both saw. Hard of understanding. Abigail approached us. Thane quickly stopped laughing and pulled me in front of him as if I was his human shield and wrapped his arms around my waist. "It's nice to meet you, Luna. I'm Abigail," she said with as much disgust and disdain in her voice as she could muster. She held her hand out to shake my own, but I ignored it since she had her hands all over my man. "I mean my friend. Mate. Guy, it's nice to meet you to Adelaide." I smirked as she gave me a death glare at saying the wrong name. "It's Abigail." She enunciated each syllable as I felt Thane shaking with laughter behind me. "Oh, is it?" I faked being unaware. Before she could turn around to leave, however, I had something else to tell her. "Oh, and Adelaide, if you ever touch my mate again, you'll what? You're nothing but a weak human," she spat. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "That's enough," Thane growled loudly at her. I turned my head to see his angry expression. "I got this," I told him. I glanced back to her while placing my hands on the nest in a loving embrace. "If you ever disrespect either the Alpha or me again, I'll personally see that you never interact with the pack again. I may not make you a rogue, but you'll be isolated from the entire pack." I only hoped that was possible and something I could do as Luna, or else my threats were empty. From the scared look in her eyes, I guess it was a possibility as she mumbled. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Luna, dejectedly, and walked away with a fire burning in her eyes. Thane chuckled in my ear and whispered. Now that was hot. Chapter 15, Family Time. 2 weeks later, it's been 2 weeks. 2 weeks of constant torture. Bo was still my trainer, and he hasn't been taking it easy on me. Every day was the same routine. Wake up, eat breakfast. Thane would drive us to the field, then training began with that god-awful Bo. For every day of the first week he had me running, pushing me to run faster and faster while increasing my laps. My body ached and I was sore by the next day, but he didn't care, and Thane was always around to save me. I came to realize a little bit more of what Thane did. I knew he trained the pack members with Bo and Lucas. He also did paperwork in his office, but I could tell he hated it and procrastinated till the last minute. Thane also ran the perimeter of the land. It was called Border Patrol, where they ensured that no one crossed into their territory without permission. As for me, Thane said that my Luna job was more of a motherly instinct. I would eventually learn on my own what I should do, but it mostly required being a mother to the pack whenever anyone needed me, as well as helping him in making decisions for the pack. But for now he wanted me training so I could protect myself from unforeseeable danger. However, Bo thought that the first thing I should master was the art of running. He instructed me that I should first run from danger instead of facing it head-on. But that's if I ever encountered such situations. I thought he was joking at first, but with the week of constant running I knew he was serious. When I was on a break, however, he made me analyze the fighters so I could have an idea of what my training entailed and what techniques they'll be using. I can now successfully say that after 2 weeks I was faster than I was before, and I knew a few self-defense mechanisms to save my ass in case I was in danger. Maybe I could beat up Thane, steal his jeep and go back home. That would work, except he could easily overpower me, and there was Border Patrol that was 10 times faster than me. Thane and I have been getting along. We haven't really been together alone for long because he had his myriad alpha duties and I was training. But besides that, we have a routine now, and I sort of, maybe, just a little bit have a crush on him. But he wouldn't. He was the epitome of a Greek god and his physique was impeccable. How did not hot girl like me end with a handsome beast? Literally, like him for a mate. Luckily for me, Abigail stopped coming around the both of us. Seems like she finally took the hint. I was just finishing up my cooldowns when I saw Thane helping out some wolves. I also got accustomed to having them around. Knowing that they were humans under all that fur eased my tension. Plus, having Thane around most of the times helped immensely because deep down I knew he wouldn't allow anything hurt me, including himself. And thank the moon goddess I am done with you, Bo exclaimed as I gave him a look. We became friends after a few days, even though we acted like we couldn't stand each other's presence. What do you mean? By the way, Bo, you smell, I said, waving my hand in front of me when I approached him. He gave me a glare but proceeded to sniff his armpits anyways. What I meant is that your training with me is finally done. I could practically feel my headache ease. I stuck my tongue out at him like the child that I was. Oh hush. You know you're eager to miss me. Contrary to what you think, Emery, I prefer to train real fighters who wouldn't use their mate to beat my ass. He replied proudly. You're just jealous he hasn't been hanging out with you as often. Thane, Lucas and Bo were all best friends. What everyone called Thane Alpha. Lucas and Lee referred to him by his given name. Hey, you stole my best friend. He pointed at me while looking hurt. Get yourself a mate, Bo. I laughed. I'm starting to think I'm a lone wolf, he said, brushing a non-existent tear from under his eye. Bo was the same age as me, 19. While it's not uncommon for a wolf to not meet his mate after 3 years, it was strange as he was the Delta, and they typically find their mates pretty easily to carry on their bloodline. And I knew he was worried that he would never find her. Maybe she saw you and got blinded by your ugliness. I smirked as I poked at his ego. He glared at me. How dare you? I'm the most attractive wolf in this pack. You mean the cutest? Thane said, pinching Bea's cheek as he came to join our banter. Thane was still jealous of Bo, and I was still jealous of Abigail, and the girls and who Thane had to help train. But Thane was slightly less jealous because I made him realize that Bo and I were FR enemies. Plus, he kept a keen eye on us, and Bo was commanded not to touch me. By command, I mean alpha command. If Thane alpha commanded anyone, then they physically and mentally can't oppose him, and they are forced to submit. It seemed terrible, but Thane hardly ever used it unless it was to stop every male from looking or touching me, even if it's a simple handshake. I, on the other hand, just kept getting more and more jealous. Thane didn't make it any easier because every time he was out on the field with us, he would take off his shirt. I mean, almost all of the guys did. But they weren't my maintenance game was getting me distracted. It was a great sight, but I would have preferred if it was just for my eyes. Not the hungry mate, less eyes of the rest of women on the field. None of them gave me a hatred or envious look, but it did boil my blood that he just stood there oblivious to all their gawking. I sound clingy, but I wasn't going to deny that over the past 2 weeks I could actually feel our mate bond strengthening. It may be lust, but it was some strong attraction. Oh great. 2 against 1. How is this even fair? Bo complained as he threw his hands in the air in exaggeration and walked away. I think he's going to miss me annoying him, I said with a laugh as I stared at his retreating figure. They let out a low growl, and I knew I rattled his cage. He would unless he wants his ass handed to him. I looked up at him as he glared at Bo. I don't think I reject to that actually. Thane turned to me with a wide grin. I knew we were paired for a reason. Rolling my eyes at him, I changed the subject. I think that he misses you. I gestured to Bo as Thane pulled me closer to him. We got accustomed to touching each other these past few weeks. We haven't kissed or anything like that, but I sensed that my presence kept Thane calmed whenever he was angry or stressed. It made me felt important to him, and I didn't mind snuggling with him on the couch. He always respected my space and ensured that I was with him pulling me closer, holding my hand or kissing my forehead. I know, but things have just been a little harder around here. He sighed and I could feel him tensing up. What do you mean? I asked as I placed my hands on his shoulder in a concerned gesture. It's nothing. I don't want you to worry, he said, tightening his hands around me. Thane, you once told me that we are equals in leading this pack. I wouldn't know how to help if you wouldn't tell me anything, I said, pulling out of his arms. He promised he wouldn't keep any secrets from me, but I knew something was up and he wouldn't tell me what. I will tell you, but when I get home, okay, he promised. I looked at him in disbelief, but I knew that his wolf blood wasn't anything easy to deal with, so I left it alone. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I simply replied. Don't be angry with me, please, he said, taking my hand in his. Not. Just let me help you, I said, squeezing his hands. He smiled at me. I will. So are you ready to head back? I'm done for the day. Actually, we extended training to a little later, so everyone is going to be here for a while and I have to stay, he explained regretfully. I have noticed that more people were in the field today. I would say a good 300 pack members was scattered all around. Okay. Well, I guess I'll just sit on the sidelines. My feet kills, I said, exhausted. Before I could pull away, Thane kept his hand in mine. I was actually thinking that you could drive the Jeep home. My face instantly broke out into a grin. You mean you're letting me drive your Jeep? I squealed merrily. He chuckled at my reaction. Yes, but under one condition. Yes, sure, whatever. Just give me the keys, I say, practically jumping. Now listen to me carefully, he said, prolonging the wait. You have to be extremely careful, he said, exaggerating the last word with a stern look. I will, don't worry. I waved him off. And you have to go straight home. Don't stray. If you want to go out, please take Bailey or one of the wolves at home with you, he said, looking me in the eyes to ensure that I understood him. That's the conditions. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He warned. Fine, I promise I would be careful and would go straight home, I said, crossing my heart as I was too excited to be patient. If anything happens to you, he began. Oh, just give me the keys, I said, cutting him off. He gave me a playful glare as he pulled out the keys from his pocket. "Promise you to drive safely and slowly," he said, holding the keys above my reach. "Now stop making my life miserable and hand over the keys." I gave him my puppy dog eyes. Reluctantly he gave the keys, and as I felt the cool metal in my palm I smiled widely at him. Before I could walk away he pulled me to him and placed a gentle kiss on my forehead. "Be safe." I pulled away with a smile as I said my goodbyes and almost ran out the clearing to the next jeep. When I started the engine I felt alive. It was the happiest I had been since I got here. I strapped on my seatbelt and with no regrets floored it out of the dirt road and to the main road where it led back to the pack house. The wind in my hair and the sun on my skin felt amazing, and I wanted to drive around forever in this great automobile, but I knew Thane would have someone reporting back to him if I didn't return home. I must admit that Thane had great taste in vehicles. The purr of the engine fueled my mind, and I felt alive. But it was short-lived because I was soon pulling up the large rustic house where I now resided. I shouldn't have driven fast, but it was impossible not to when the road was completely empty except for me. Pulling up to the driveway I parked next to the next Mustang in the garage and got out only to be frightened by Bailey. "Geez, do you ever get tired of scaring the shit out of me?" I asked as I held my chest and trying to slow down my racing heart. Bailey would always scare me every time she saw me. Thane was actually right. We did become friends. While Thane was busy I would usually hang out with Bailey in the garden, or we would help her mum prepare lunch or dinner for Else. We were sort of like best friends, and I'm glad to have met her. "Do you never expect me?" She answered my question with a question. "Touch," I replied. "I see you finally got to drive the Jeep." She pointed it out. "Yes, but she has been torturing me by not letting me drive it," I said as we walked in the house. "It rides so smooth. Rough is better." She shrugged. I looked at her with wide eyes. "Bailey, don't be a potty mouth." I playfully slapped her shoulder. "Hey, you thought about it," she said, laughing as she clearly wanted me to understand her innuendo. She was quite the weird one, looking all innocent with a nasty mind. "You implied it," I said back. "Wait, does that mean you did it?" she said, grabbing my elbow. I rolled my eyes knowing exactly what she meant. "EWWW, no way. I barely know the guy. I'm not going to jump his bones. The day I found out Lucas was my mate, I jumped him." She replied with no shame. "Yeah, but you're a wolf. And you're either mate of a wolf. No excuses." Poor guy must have blew. I cut her off before she could go any further. "Bailey, you knew Lucas from around the pack before you realized he was your mate. It's different for Thane and I. I don't have the urge to jump him, nor have I known him beyond 3 weeks." I explained. "I understand, sweetie. We wolves do have that animalistic tendency, so I guess you can't blame me for asking," she remorsefully said. "No, don't worry about it. Can you keep a secret, though?" Duh. Why do you think we're best friends?" she said, rolling her eyes. Confiding in her, I finally admitted what I've been keeping to myself. Thane thinks that I don't like him. He thinks that I hate him, but I don't. I think that somehow this mate bond thing is finally getting around my mind. I actually like him, but I'm scared bail. We've only known each other for a little over 2 weeks. Don't you think it's too rushed to be feeling this way? I felt nervous admitting this to her, but I didn't have anyone else to talk to. "Oh, sweetie," Bailey said, pulling me in her arms. "It's what the mate bond does. You're meant to be together, so it pulls you both closer, whether you like it or not. You may think it's rushed and unrealistic to be feeling this way, but for werewolves it's kind of strange that you haven't been together as yet. I know, but I'm not ready. And I'm certainly not ready to produce his heir," I said, probably sounding like a mad person. "Don't stress yourself over it. Plus Thane is your mate and he would never push you to do something you don't want to." She comforted me. "Thanks, Bale. I really needed some assurance." I smiled at her. "Anytime. And if anything else is bothering you, just let me know, okay? I've needed another girl's company around here." Even though Bailey had her older adopted sister Abigail, I could tell they don't get along. They hardly spoke. I for one was happy because that shrew was too touchy with my mate. "I'll be right back. I have to shower," I said, heading for the stairs after my talk with Bailey. Actually, there's someone upstairs waiting for you. She called back. Who? I turned back and asked. Don't worry, just go. She smiled. Warily I went upstairs to the 3rd floor. As I approached, I could hear 3 hushed voices talking and knew it all belonged to women. Entering Ben's living room, I was shocked to see Ben's mother, sister and a lady from the antique store I met days before the ritual back in Fairburn. The one that gave me the beautiful dress I wore to the ritual. Thane told me his grandmother was on the council with the elders, so this must be her considering she was in Fairburn and now she's here. I suddenly felt a blossom of hope unraveled in me, but I was also scared because I didn't want to leave Thane. But could I leave to see my parents without saying goodbye to Thane? Would she take me back with her to visit? All these thoughts filled my mind as I stared at the elderly woman. Mrs. Fraser, I asked, remembering the old woman's name. Yes, my dear child. Call me Jane. Please, she said happily as she approached me with Ben's mother and sister on her heels. Ben's mother noticed my dumbfounded expression. Emery, this is Ben's grandmother, she explained. Finding my voice, I asked, Why, you're the one who gave me the dress? Yes, my dear, and it's so lovely to meet you again, she said, coming in for a hug. I reciprocated the action, still in wonder, but a bit embarrassed because I knew I smelt extremely pungent being covered in sweat from my training. Now Jane, why don't you give us some space and show she's tired from all that training Thane has been putting her through? Ben's mom said as she placed her arms on Jane's shoulder and gently pulled her away from me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. It's great to see you again. I smiled at Ben's mom and then his sister, and of course State. I smiled at them all and quickly rushed over to Ben's bedroom and jumped in the shower, ensuring that all my bodily odor was scrubbed off. I grabbed a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and went back into the living room, hoping that I haven't had them waiting too long. Good, you're back, Jane exclaimed happily. Come here and sit with us. She patted the seat between herself and Anne. As I sat between the 2 females of the Blackwood family, I couldn't help but ask, Jane, not be rude, but how are you here? Curiosity laced my tone. You met her before? Tate asked, curiously. I looked over at her and nodded. She gave the dress I wore for the ritual. Tate laughed. Always the meddling old lady. Hush, child. Jane playfully scolded Tate before she turned back to me with a welcoming smile. Well, dear, I was married to a human in Fairburn. You see, I never met my mate, so I lived in Fairburn for my life. I got married to a human until he died, and I now venture between both territories to keep track of the ritual and all the bits and bobs in between. So you knew that I was meant to be Ben's mate? I asked, shocked. I had a strong feeling. She smiled at me. Okay, enough chit-chat. Where's that grandson of mine? Not treating his mate with the attention she deserves, obviously. Tate laughed before Anne threw a pillow at her. I blushed at Tate's comment before I explained. Actually, as HES actually was training. He said that they extended the hours. They all gave each other a knowing look, and I knew I was being kept in the dark. Well, that's good. It gives us girls some time to talk, and said with a smile when she saw my confusion. Yes, and you're right. I've been meaning to meet Emery here for quite some time, and that son of yours has been keeping her cooped up here. Jane grumbled. Actually, I've been with the pack members training, I clarified. Jane exclaimed with distaste. Jane, Anne said in warning. She's actually pretty good, grandma, and sure she could take me. Isn't that right, Em? Tate smiled encouragingly. I rolled my eyes at her. I don't know about that, but I do have some skills up my sleeve. No, Jane cut us off. What is the meaning of this training? Darling, you shouldn't be training in your condition. Tell that grandson of mine to take care of you instead of having you labor away in the sun, she said with a frown which justified her wrinkles. I was confused. What condition? I asked, worrying that I had some incurable disease no one told me about. Oh well, I assume you're already pregnant, Jane simply answered. My eyeballs almost fell out of its socket. Pregnant? Tate snickered at my obvious discomfort, and I sent her a help me look, to which she shook her head no at me. Jane, don't stress her. Then mom answered on my behalf. I'm not pregnant. I finally answered when I found my voice. Now Jane's eyes bulged out of her head. Not pregnant. You're joking, aren't you? Tate full out started to laugh at that one. Grandma. Oh my gosh, she just got here. I looked at and he just patted my shoulder as she came to my rescue. Jane, you have to understand Emery's position. She just arrived here and I'm sure she and Thane aren't ready for kids yet. She put her arm around my shoulders in a side hug and I felt at ease, but Jane's curious eyes were still on me. You haven't slept together, have you? She suddenly asked. I felt my cheeks burn alive and I didn't know how to get away from this conversation. Jane, Grandma, and Tate both scolded the old woman. Okay, I'll stop, but Emery, I want to see my great-grandbaby before I pass on to the other side. Don't pay attention to her, She's just trying to coerce you into making babies. Tate winked. I laughed at that before and went on. Oh, leave the poor child alone, Jane. Don't forget that at one point I was in her position. Yes, I remember. How awful was the day that you told me I would never get a grandchild because my nephew was an animal. Jane laughed. I could imagine saying the exact thing, but I didn't want to disrespect anyone by saying that. Suddenly Anne pulled me up from the sofa and we were heading towards the kitchen. Enough baby talk for today. I'm quite hungry. Anne excused us while Tate followed. Jane looked tired on the couch as her eyes closed down on her as we entered the kitchen. Old lady is always sleeping away on herself. Tate shrugged. So it's for dinner? Anne asked with a smile. Looking down shamefully, I admitted. I don't really know how to cook. Relatable. Tate mumbled as she took out a can of soda from the refrigerator. Okay, I'll show you how to make. I looked up at her and saw her at ease as she gracefully fluttered around the kitchen gathering ingredients and pans. Yes, my mom makes the best pizza. Tate squealed. If I'm being honest, I didn't really know how to cook myself when I came here. I was at a loss to how I was going to manage a pack when I cowled and even make mac and cheese. She joked. I'm more of an eater than a chef. I explained as I helped her get some pizza toppings. It was actually Jane who helped me out when I came here. Then grandparents weren't around when I was brought here from the ritual. They died a few years before from an attack on the pack. So Carson, then father, and I had to figure out everything on our own on how to efficiently run a pack. She became my mother. She talked while she made a few large pizzas and I tried my very best to help her. Jane, she helped us through it. She taught me how to be a Luna. Helped me learn to cook. She even helped me take care of Thane when he was a baby because I was as inexperienced as could be. She looked nostalgic at the memory. I know what you're going through, Emery. You may hate me for condoning such a ritual and acting as everything is fine, but I want you to understand why you're here. I do. Thane explained to me that we're made. I informed her. You are, but you're so much more than that. You're either Luna. I want us to have the kind of mother-daughter relationship that Jane and I have. I want you to feel as comfortable with me as my own daughter Tate does. We looked over at the girl in question who was grinning at us. I want you to understand why I couldn't help you when we met weeks ago. I want you to be the best Luna this pack has ever seen. She concluded, looking at me. Her motherly comfort almost brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, Anne. It means the world to me to hear you say that, and I could never stop being sorry for how I treated you when I first met you. Oh, darling, come here. She opened her arms for me, and I happily allowed myself to be wrapped in her warm motherly embrace. She smelled of baked cookies, and I instantly remembered my own mother. Group hug. Tate exclaimed as she joined in on our hug, and felt like a mother to me, and I could tell Tate and I were going to get along like sisters. When we all pulled away, and said, "You were forgiven the moment you ran off with tears in your eyes that day. I saw the regret in your eyes, dear. I know you only said it out of anger. Thank you so much. You have no idea how much it means to me to have your forgiveness." She brushed a straight air from my eye. "Now come on, help me put these in the oven." She pointed to the 6 pizzas on the counter, and I knew she made enough for then and Tate's appetite. While it was baking, and I chatted about her past when she was still in Fairbairn to the moment she was pregnant with Thane. Tate talked about growing up here and about the pack. and revealed that she and I weren't that different, as she was also angry with Thane's father when he brought her here button like Thane. His father showed his mother that he was a werewolf the very next day after the ritual. By the time the pizzas were done, Jane woke up from her nap on the couch and they all ate wild memories of when Thane was young. I decided to wait for Thane so we could have dinner together like we usually do. By the time they were done, it was well past 9 at night, and I couldn't help but wonder where Thane was. Did he know that Jane and Tate were here? I could tell and was worried when she asked Thane, which only made me worry for no reason. Jane, however, distracted us by recalling tales of her golden days being a young wolf. As the clock struck 11, Thane decided to make an appearance as I heard him hurrying up the stairs. Coming straight to the living room, he was shocked to find me with his family. Gran, Mom, Tate, what are you three doing here? He looked happy to see them, but his eyes had a hint of fear. Thane, how could you leave your mate alone all evening? She's been worried sick about you, Jane said, and that I couldn't believe that I was so transparent that she knew I was worried. Yeah, big bro. Not cool. I'll kick your ass if you hurt her. Tate winked my way as Thane looked embarrassed. Apologize to her and you better make it up, and said as they all got up. I promise I will, Thane said as he gave them all a hug and a peck on their cheeks like a good family man. Now I think it's better we go. Your father's been bothering me to get home, and said. It was lovely meeting you again, Emery, Jane said, pulling me towards her in a powerful embrace. She was an old woman, but she was a strong wolf. Gran, you're squeezing the air out of her, Thane said worriedly. Don't speak to your grandma like that, you insolent boy. Jane slapped the back of his head, causing a giggle to escape me and Tate. I'm glad I got the chance to speak to you again, and said, hugging me while Thane and Jane went on with their little banter. Me too. It was lovely having you here. What about me? Tate pouted. You to Tate. Drops by any time. I pulled her into a hug. I will, she said, following her mother to the staircase. Please don't. Thane smiled at her and she flashed him her middle finger. Let's go, girls. My feet are killing me, Jane said, even though she's been sitting since I got here. I'll take you all home, Thane offered. I already contacted your father, and said, tapping her forehead, and I knew she used mind link. As they walked towards the staircase, I felt as if I've gained a family and a joyful feeling blossomed within me. Don't forget, I want a great grandson within the next few months. And remember, have fun and condoms are bad, Jane said with a wink before leaving. She does know that she's preaching the exact opposite of what everyone has ever told me, right? I whispered to Thane, embarrassed as they left. She's been pestering me since I found you, Thane said, looking at me with a smile. Are you ready? I suddenly asked. Ready for? He asked, confused. To become a parent. I clarified. You want to know now? Joe, I just want to know if you're ready to become a dad. I asked, embarrassed that he thought I was ready to sleep with him. He thought about it for a moment before he answered. To be honest, and I am. I'm not ready because I don't think he'll be a great father, but since I started off a training, it was expected of me to have a kid when I met my mate. I'm ready to have a family with you, Emery. But I'm scared I wouldn't be a great dad. Hey, you'll be a great dad. I took his hand and gave it a squeeze to get my point across to him. I've seen you with the kids around the pack, Thane. You're absolutely great at handling them. He looked at me with admiration. Did I ever tell you how great you are? No, but you can start. Don't worry though. We wouldn't do anything you aren't ready for. I mean it. He cupped my cheek as he looked me in the eye, so I knew that he would never push me. Okay, enough baby talk. Why are you so late? I remembered what time it was and trying to get away from discussing parenthood with Thane. He scratched the back of his neck nervously. Both thought it was a good idea to run border patrol tonight after training to ensure everyone was at their post. I'm sorry, Emery. I will make it up to you, I promise. He explained. You don't have to. It's your job and I understand. Why don't we have dinner? I said, walking to the kitchen. You cooked? He asked, surprised. Okay, I know I can't cook, but I'm not that bad. Is it edible? He asked with amusement playing in his eyes. Haha, very funny. Your imam actually made it. I'm glad to see you, and my mum, sister and grandma got to spend some quality time together. He grabbed our plates as I grabbed 2 bottles of water and sat in our usual seat at the counter. They're all lovely. You'll eat half them all, I said with a smile. They're your family to sweetheart. I cut myself a slice as Thane grabbed his own pizza pan. We ate while Thane told me about training and I joked with him about something he did as a child that Jane told me. When we finished, we washed the dishes and I was going to hit the sack but he stopped me. Hey, I was wondering. He trailed off. Wondering what? I asked, confused. He rubbed his hand behind his neck and I picked up that he did that every time he was nervous about something. Well, I am. I was wondering if you want to. You know, he said like if it was an explanation. Then just tell me. I smiled at his shyness. To my aching extraordinaire, Madeline Nilbe. Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. He let out a deep breath. I was wondering if you wanted to go on a date with me. I smirked at him.